Well, Rick, you and I both see, when we're out on the road, we see this fear, and we look straight in the eyes of the people in the audience. We're seeing it.
It's constant.
Yeah.
One of the things that I was talking to an individual just a short time ago, and I was mentioning this before the show, is we're asking about, as we help people in our line of work, what is the one thing that they're looking for most from us? And the answer comes back, it's that reassurance in the face of fear. I mean, when you see markets...
And guidance as well. People want guidance.
Yeah, but with the volatility, the way it is in the markets, even the most seasoned investor, when you see the market moving up 200 points...
Seasoned professionals are getting
well, and that's a good question. Geoff, as you work with the institutions, how are you seeing the institutions? Now, we talk to the retail investor, and it's pretty clear that they're standing on thin ice as far as they're concerned. They're afraid of the next step. But what are you seeing from the institutional investor? Are they experiencing the same kind of trepidation?
Absolutely. I'd sum it up in 2 words: battle fatigue.
Yeah.
They're beaten up. If you look at 2008 so far, every day but 2 days, we've had the Dow at one point during the day be up either 100 points or down 100 points. That's unbeliable volatility.
That's stress.
That's a lot of stress. And
I also think it's important, however, to point out that we were just at 14,000, on the Dow, and a 100-point move in the context of most investors seems like a big move.
Right.
But on a percentage basis, these are very small moves. They feel like bigger moves because people remember the Dow being at 7,000.
It's not just
more psychological at that point.
But we're seeing 300-point moves.
But
not regularly, but it's enough to move people to silence.
But nothing compared to what we saw in the tech meltdown in 1999 and 2000,
Sure.
where we saw 500 and 800-point swings
Right.
on many different days.
Right.
So I think this is a different type of crisis, and I think that we should have to think of it in context as this holds a little bit of every past crisis we've had. It has a little bit of the savings and loan crisis. It has a little bit of the tech crisis in the sense that valuations got away from themselves.
You have rising energy costs.
Rising energy costs, which is the underpinning, and of course the war. So we really have a lot of things coming together at one time, and although the moves seem fairly big to most people, they're really, in the context of things, not all that big. We're at 12,500, as we shoot the show today. It's 1,500 points off the highs. The S&P is down 7.9%, so far in 2008. And but what's really the underpinning and the fear, I would say, from the institutional people that I fear is how are their investors going to, react to their home values dropping and the insecurity that's manifesting.
Well, it's perceived
on
value.
that end,
People
right.
are looking at their net worth and counting their homes, where a lot of the banks are looking at, especially Florida, real estate is being so undervalued at this point. How do you value this in your portfolio?
And I think that you have to value it at about 15% less than it was trading.
Maybe even more. I mean, if you want to be more conservative and take the fear out and just give yourself a little bit of a cushion, you should. I mean, I'm not saying people go out there and looking to build the equity so they could borrow against it, but it's the perceived value. I think people feel less wealthy.
Absolutely.
And therefore they hold back in their spending and in their investments.
But there's some good news in all of this, though, however, is that with the dollar dropping, which is really affecting institutional concerns and concerns about withdrawals, is that real estate here in Florida has now become a bargain for foreign investors. And this is an environment here in Florida where, homeowners should take some solace in the fact that this is one of the destination points for foreign investors.
You got the drop in real estate prices, but you also have the drop in the dollar. So this is a super sale going on for the European investors who are still buying in pounds and even in the euros, which is still going to be a bargain.
And that's ultimately going to be one of the big pluses that's going to help save this market, is that you've got the foreign investors coming back in, both buying real estate. My brother just sold his house in La Jolla, California, to a family from France that came in and paid cash for the house.
Right.
You look at all the sovereign wealth funds that are coming into the country and buying pieces of U.S. companies and actually supporting a lot of the banks. So there's a lot of really interesting things going on within the market that hopefully will be able to provide some stability.
Well, we want to pick up on that after the break, that whole idea of sovereign funds, because that raises another issue that's in the minds of both institutions and retail investors. But right now we're going to take a break, and we're going to hear a word from Finest Known Facts. So stay with us. Welcome back to Wealth and Wisdom with the Market Guys. Appreciate you staying with us through the break. And as you have seen in the first part of today's show, we have a lively discussion continuing on with James DiGeorgia and Geoff Garbacz. And before the break, gentlemen, we were talking about, we had just started talking about the whole idea of sovereign funds. You know, this is an issue that's coming up now because of the fact of there's such strong buying power, number one. Number two, there are such deep resources available, and quite honestly, let's face it, some of our companies and industries are in dire need of these cash infusions. We take a look at situations like Citi with the Saudi sovereign investments. Geoff, let me ask you, what are your thoughts on this type of money coming in to this magnitude in our markets right now?
You know, it's very interesting. Some people are very for it and others are against it, but we made a decision in the late 80s, beginning of the 90s, that we wanted to globalize the world. And this is one of the consequences, that we decide that we can go invest in other countries and they should have the same rights to come back and invest within the U.S. But it does represent various issues. A recent example is 3Com. Bain Capital and a Chinese sovereign wealth fund decided to buy 3Com. And that deal was shut down very quickly by the U.S. government, saying, wait a second, there's national security issues. Right. So it's going to be a real concern in the military space, but clearly they've been coming in the financial space in a pretty big way. It's a very complicated issue, but we decided to globalize the world, and we can't really turn back now.
It's a consequence of the road we started down.
Exactly.
Really, yeah.
Well, again, getting back to the international investors coming to the U.S. markets, we were talking about gold markets. Of course, that's the universal market. It's traded all around the world. But, James, what are you seeing with regard to sectors in our markets that are more or less the hot ones? Are you still bullish on the oils? Because that was another topic that we talked about when you were last guest on the show.
You know, I think oil was about $54 or in the high 40s when I last appeared. And I don't think the story is going to change very much. In fact, I'm quite shocked at some of the pundits that appear on TV and give advice that, you know, they keep pushing down that oil is going to go down to 80 or 70. And, you know, frankly, I don't see it. I think I'm more in the Slim Boone Pickens, you know, line where we're basically going to have a floor between 90 and 120. And the wild card, of course, is, you know, an event. Like a hurricane, weather-related, a terrorist event, or even a strike. The Nigerian oil workers were just you know, on the verge of striking, but they decided not to continue negotiations. So I think that we could see a peak, you know, any day at 150. That would be a temporary peak.
Well, nothing has changed in the refinery capacity either, which has always been a driving factor.
Well, I think it's important to distinguish between gasoline prices here in the United States and oil. And in the gasoline arena, you know, I've been telling people, you know, $4 is shocking, but you better get used to $7 because that's really what we're heading. And it's not a function of supply demand, but as a way of addressing some of the imbalances that are being caused right now in our own market. And what I'm talking about, of course, is the fact that states are going to be raising taxes dramatically in order to cover the shortfalls that they're going to lose on the real estate side. It's going to be justified by what the Democrats have been saying for a few years. If we raise taxes dramatically, we'll be able to go ahead and provide a disincentive, and that may lower oil. Okay, but that's just not going to happen, because when people talk about the oil market here in the United States, they tend to focus on the United States, but not the worldwide demand. It's the same thing with gold. Look, there's a lot more currency, whether you're talking about euros or yuan or renminbi, dollars, and South American currencies chasing commodities, chasing oil and chasing gold. You know, money grows geometrically. Right now, the printing presses have been going full tilt. The Federal Reserve has, since November, introduced $585 billion into the market to shore up, you know, the credit situation. And at the same time, they've made billions, tens of billions of dollars available through the back door in the Fed window in order to make sure that the markets, the credit markets, stabilize.